computer. So this is my friend Duff. And we were just chatting before, and I realized we were saying all sorts of important things that I wanted to say on camera. So I'm just kind of forcing the interview to start a little early. And I mean, the purported reason we're here is this book, and I've got a pen in it and all sorts of markups, is called Wise Up, and she wrote this, and it came out last year, right?
Yes, came out
Last year. And
April, yes.
I just keep coming back to it because there's so much wisdom in here. And also, I never read the Stoics. So I kind of feel like you're giving me the Stoics in a way that I can really understand. And I guess I actually wanted to start with one page, if you don't mind.
Love it.
And I'll read it, and then I want to talk to you about it, because it just seems like the sort of the reason, the raison d'être for this book. It says, whatever's coming, it's going to be painful, it will be worrying, it will be gut-wrenching, and it's going to leave a mark. This is why it's important to have a philosophy of life. Stoicism offers wisdom and insight. When you're alone, it offers company, good company. When you're ambitious, it inspires self-discipline. When you're lazy, it motivates action. When you're fortunate, it reminds you to be grateful and moderate. When you're suffering, it teaches you to dig deep and be resilient. When you are anxious and fearful, it gives you the knowledge that you have the guts to carry on. So talk to me about the origins of this book. And I want you to bring in, if you can, your own battles, your own illnesses, stuff that you've lived through, and yet you are the happiest person I know. Why?
Well, it is because of gratitude. Seneca said, gratitude is not only the most important of virtues, but it is the parent to all others. I have a habit where every day I write a thank you letter. I was just doing it while we were just writing a letter to thank the lady at the diner for breakfast on Shrove Tuesday. I think that coming from a position of gratitude, like I am so grateful. I live a life in extremis. I have had the greatest things happen, and I'm also living with a incurable degenerative neurological disease that causes chronic pain. And
what's the name of it? It's sarcoidosis.
It's called sarcoidosis of the central nervous system.
Okay.
And what I recognized, and I had been reading the Stoics when I was younger. I got a job at MTV. I had worked at a nursing home calling bingo, and I was a recreational therapist, the greatest job of my life at the West Village. Before MTV. And I realized while I was doing the job that I loved the most, which was really trying to inspire people who had memory issues to connect with them with music. I hosted the Frank Sinatra Appreciation Society. And then I realized that I have a skill set that really could translate to MTV, because MTV was being accused of shortening attention spans. I had to modulate my elocution to speak clearly and loudly. I also knew how to use my body so people could pay attention to me. And also, I'm more visible. I'm black and white and red. And most doctors are older, in the past, older white men in white lab coats with white hair against a white wall. And I was visible. Yeah. So I realized I'm just going to give it a shot. So I made a homemade video, sent it into MTV, just kind of as a lark, and I wound up getting the job. And I realized, this was going to have a responsibility and a power. And so I figured, to be speaking to popular culture, perhaps I should go back to ancient wisdom. And that's how I really got into reading the Stoics. And so kind of Marcus Aurelius gave me like the juice and the confidence, to not fall apart when I'd never been on camera before. And kind of right in my early 30s, I was diagnosed with sarcoidosis. And it created a lesion in my brain, and your skull is a contained environment. So as this lesion grew, it crushed all the nerves in this part of my in my central nervous system. So in my neck and my extremities, I have constant pain. And I figured, you know, there's so many warlike metaphors when you're dealing with illness. Like, oh, we're going to fight. Well, you know, we're going to fight this. We're going to battle it. We're going to blast it. And I was like, whoa, I'm a lover, not a fighter.
Yeah,
If
you said
I
it what?
hated,
Yeah, and you said at some point in here you negotiated with your pain, and I love that word because we all have things that happen to us. We all have illnesses that we are dealing with. We don't all have illnesses we're dealing with constantly, but everybody gets sick every once in a while. And to negotiate with the illness rather than battle it, because I thought that was a really important point.
I thought if I hated what was in my brain, if I hated this pain, I would be hating far too much of my life. That
Right.
would be, it would just, it would not be tolerable. So I just was like, all right, everybody has something. I'll accept it. Dr. Albert Schweitzer said, we are all temporarily abled. I mean, we all eventually will have some sort of illness, or people we love will have an illness. And so I think this really jimmies up your compassion. So I have found the Stoic wisdom, specifically of Marcus Aurelius, who's probably the most well-known. Actually, I did an image of the Stoics as the Beatles. And crossing Abbey Road. It's one of my favorite. And so it's got Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, who was enslaved, and Epictetus was actually the teacher of Marcus Aurelius. And he was beaten by his sadistic master, who was a secretary to Nero. And you can always tell Epictetus because he always has a walking stick in his images. And I realized Epictetus lived with chronic pain every day. And again, his radiant intellect carries on 23 centuries later, where it still feels like the ink is wet, which is what I love about Stoicism.
The one thing I mean, I'm going to try to find it, but you had talked about love in a way that I thought I had also never seen. Hold on, let me find it. It's maybe the first line. It's the various different types of love.
Yes, it's in That's an Amore, and it's
I found it. It's page 59. So talk to me about the different types of love. Here you write eros, philia, ludos, pragma, philautia. Is that how you say it?
Yes,
Philautia and agape. So eros, sexual passion.
So I think that I love that there are many interpretations of love. And I think the ancient Greeks would look at us and see a Lifetime Hallmark movie and be like, what's going on with these primitive people? They only believe there was one type of love. And I think that when you understand the Greek definition of love, which has such a refined taxonomy, where again, there's eros, the passionate love, where you will have kisses that are so narcotic that you will see your own brain. Like that's amazing. But to the ancient Greeks, that was destabilizing and frightening. Right. They far believed in philia, the brotherly love. Philadelphia, the city of brother love. They believed in that the love for all mankind, the agape, the love of self. There are so many ways to find love, and I think in right now at this time on our planet, the number of people who are single and living without partners has outranked the number of people who are living together. Yeah. So I think when you understand that there are so many ways to love, that you will then recognize how absolutely wealthy we are in life. Like, I'm not Scrooge McDuck of love. I've spending it. I've got it. And again, the more you throw out into the world, the more you kind of receive and be aware. So I'm always encouraging people to be awake to love and not only think that it's, the Prince version of love is the most important.
Well, I'm going to say something, and maybe you're going to be embarrassed if I say this, but I was at a moment in my life before I met my current partner when I was alone, dealing with COVID last year. And I had just met you. We had just met at a 60th birthday of a friend of ours. And you showed up. You showed up in so many love ways, in the philia ways, that it blew me away. You sent me food. You sent me one of those breath things that you have to blow into to make sure you're actually breathing. You texted every hour on the hour. And I actually thought to myself in that moment, I am rich in love, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you so much. And I will tell you, I am passing that on, because when I was pancaked by COVID, our friend that we met the same weekend, Sally, sent me Veselka chicken soup.
Oh my
And
God.
I will tell you, I had just met you guys, and I live in the same building with my two best friends that I've grown up with. And like, there's something so beautiful about like not being not doubting, like, oh, is this too much, or am I doing too little? No, just follow your heart. And I just I so believe that we are like human crop sprayers of love. And just by adding just the tiniest bit, I just went to go get a coffee, and there's an older gentleman in a walker, and I saw the barista being so kind. And when the geezer left, I was like, dude, you just made my day, watching you be so patient and kind to that gentleman. I said, that guy may not speak to anybody all day. And he said, oh, I'm sorry I took you so long. And it was just a beautiful experience to just, I think when you're awake to gratitude, that is, you're on the grease chute to love.
Well, I kind of feel whenever I'm around you that you, as a force of nature, awake everyone around you to their own gratitude. But I'm going to switch. I'm going to switch courses for a second and talk about, at the end, you have this funny chapter about your name. And you talk about having been given the name Karen back in the 60s, and how that name has been, let's just say, reclaimed by a subset of people that want to call us all out for our horrific behavior in middle age as women. But I too, so I grew up as Debbie, and I hate it. I really, really hate it, because what happened was when I was 13, Betamax came out and Debbie Does Dallas came out. And it's just like, from then on, I could not handle the name Debbie. So when did you claim Duff? And do you go, and I noticed that your book is written by Karen Duffy, but everybody else knows you as Duff. So how do you go, like, how do you call yourself? How do you go between the Karen Duffy of birth and the Duff who you are?
So it feels weird to be mislabeled. Everybody in my family is named after a saint or an ancestor. And my mom was going to name me Willie Mae, and at the last minute changed her mind in the hospital and called me Karen, which has like all the charm of two rusting tuna trawler, like just these hard syllables, Karen. So I just, as a kid, I was just like, I've never been called Karen, and my family calls me Cannonball. And and it's funny, my son, when I don't know, when he was about 3, I said, do you know what my name is? And he's like, it's Duff. Like, because it is weird to just have it's something we have no control over, our name. And it's something that there is research that the more you hear your name, the more you like that person. Like, the more I hear, like, no one ever calls me Karen. And like, I think I have that opposite experience. So it's been interesting. I have an organization called the Society of Good Karens, and we don't want to call the manager. We just want to call you up and have a good time. So it's funny. My girlfriend, she's an activist, Karen Russell, NBA legend Bill Russell's daughter, and so we've created this society to try and do a little good for Karens.
Oh, I love it. Okay, and now we have so little time left, but I want to ask a few more questions about this book, because there's one point. So I know that you studied to be a chaplain to lead people through the process of death, which is an extraordinary job to take on, but also one that you do with incredible gratitude. But what I loved is you said you were given an assignment to talk about what your own death should be like. And I want to read this because it made me crack up. You wrote, I want, get through this. I want a novelty Halloween recording of spooky sound effects, normally used to scare trick-or-treaters, to greet my mourners. During the service, I'll have the song That's Life by Sinatra on a continuous loop. I mean, it goes on. And I was cracking up, and it's so infrequent that we, as specifically Americans, are able to look death in the face. Tell me how your workings with people who are dying have led to your incredible optimism and gratitude.
You know, the Stoics believe in memento mori, remember too that you shall die. But I also, memento vivere, remember too that you shall live. And it has been an honor of a lifetime to I am a practicing Roman Catholic, and I am a Buddhist non-denominational chaplain, because the Pope of Rome doesn't really let women do too much. The beauty of working in a clinical setting and being able to see people and their families at this sacred moment, it's almost there's a sanctifying quality. And I was led to that because I wanted to be useful. I always I'm a member of the Office of Emergency Management Community Emergency Response Team, which is a volunteer organization that I love in New York City. Actually, they're all over the country. But I just felt like in life, we can be useful or useless. And I thought, I want to be useful. And one of the ways is I think that people are shying away from death. And like, how can we deny it? I mean, we all know it's going to happen. I have so many friends, as now that we're inching in on our 6th decade, they're shocked that we got old. I was like, didn't you see it coming? But I think that if you go to nyc.gov or any state that you're in, you can go on your state website and look up last directives, and it's a really great thing to do. And it just like has a list of what you want to do, and print it out, and then put it in a safe deposit box, give it around, but let people know, because the thing is, you never know when a piano might fall out and you die a Looney Tunes death. Like, you never know. So it's good to have a preparation that to prepare people. It's a nice gift that you can do as a living, breathing person to all the people who love you. Let them know your wishes.
I told my kids my wishes in my 40s, and I said to them, just burn me and throw me in the Seine. Because I thought, instead of like spending money on a big funeral, like take a trip to Paris and just toss me in the Seine. And then I kind of changed that, and I said to them, burn me, definitely. I don't want it to cost a lot of money, but then you choose wherever you want to sprinkle me, because at that point, I won't care. I'll be dead. So if you want to go to Paris and go, you have the money to go to Paris and throw me in the Seine, great. Then have a great meal afterwards. If not, the nearest tree, whatever.
I think that is such a healthy way. And I think it's also like we have this like idea that things are taboo and that we can't talk about it. And I think it's one of the gifts of Stoic wisdom, of all philosophy, is like this I believe that Stoicism is not just about how to live your life, but it's the loving of the living of your life.
Yeah.
And part of that comes with the honor of death. And so yeah, I mean, I'm easygoing. I think my final directives is I'm mixed up with fireworks and I'm going to be shot off. But there's a lot of ways to go. Like I have a whole list. You can be like turned into a record on vinyl. The guy who invented the Frisbee had his cremains mixed into Frisbee batter, and he said he wanted to spend eternity on somebody else's garage. The guy who invented Pringles was buried in a Pringles can.
No way. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So death can be a lot more fun.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. All right. And one last question I have, which is this book is written as a form of letters to your son, Jack.
Mm-hmm.
Has he read it yet? And what is his experience of the book? Because I know my kids don't read my books or won't read them until much, much later.
So there is often Stoics wrote their philosophy in letters. Seneca's letter to a young Stoic. And I realized that I was writing this book really, for women who maybe hadn't had a connection with Stoic wisdom. And I thought if I could address these essays in letter form, that the love I have for the person I'm writing would then spill over, because there's such an intimacy in reading. And so I wanted like you to feel kind of embraced by love when you were reading these, kind of putting yourself into the character. And also I could put in fart jokes and make things
Totally.
that would make my son laugh. And so it was beautiful. So I asked permission if I could write have the books addressed to him, and he said yes, but what I'd ask is, can you use my real name? Like, don't call me Lefty, like don't call me Lucky, because I am proud of you. And so right before I handed in the draft, I said, would you like to read it? And he's a high school senior, and he said yes. And then he said, I'd love to have a response. So then he wrote a letter back to me, and it's been funny, like this like very esteemed philosophical journal pointed out that my son Jack's letter, it's like, now I understand why Seneca never published any of the responses from Lucilius, because Jack's note is so cheeky and funny. And so it's interesting that in Europe, actually in France, if you post images of your child can sue you, and you can, I think you can get like a fine and up to 7 years in prison. Wow. So I wanted to make sure it was cool with Jack that that he was going to be a part of this, and it's been great. And he's really has taken Stoicism, but in his own time. Like, I've really liked that it's kind of seeping in.
Well, I felt like I was incredibly grateful because I had what I considered a good education, and somehow the Stoics had escaped me. I had never studied them. So now what I've been doing is kind of going back and forth between your book and the actual Stoics themselves. So I really want to thank you for that. Also, I've been going to a lot of Buddhist tracks. Like, I kind of feel like you cover so much in here that it's basically a guide to life. I mean, it's called Wise Up, Irreverent Enlightenment from a Mother Who's Been Through It, but it's more than that. It's kind of like, here's how to live your life. And I just want to thank you for talking to me today. Please stay on, and I will talk to you after I press stop on the record. But I love the book, and I am so grateful for you to talk to me today. Okay, hold on a second.